Before Nintendo's Famicom took over, MSX machines were the home video game systems of choice in Japan in the 1980s. MSX wasn't a single device, but Microsoft's attempt to create a standard for home computing, similar to the VHS standard for video. So there was a wide variety of hardware options from manufacturers like Yamaha, Canon, and Panasonic. Developer TPMCO began creating games for MSX in 1985 and never stopped. The limited processing power and decidedly retro graphics capabilities of MSX machines meant that TPMCO was ideally suited to create a game for Playdate. His arcade-inspired action game, Battleship Godios, combines a side-scrolling shooter with some of the mechanics from the classic Breakout, along with an innovative bullet recapturing system, plus a few shots at redemption via a time rewind mechanism. In this challenging action game, your goal is to destroy battleships without taking enemy fire or running out of bullets. Welcome to the Playdate podcast, bringing you stories from game designers, developers, and the team behind Playdate, the little yellow game console with a crank. I'm Krista Mergen. Today I'm talking with Battleship Godios creator TPMCO. Thanks to tremendous help from Nobi Hasegawa, president of Panic Japan KK, Panic's Japanese division. During this episode, you'll hear both TPMCO's voice in Japanese, as well as the English translation by Nobi. And just a heads up, there are mild spoilers for Battleship Godios in this episode in terms of gameplay mechanics. Okay, let's meet the developer.
はい、皆さんこんにちは、TPMCO です。
Hello everyone, this is TPMCO.
TPMCO was the sole creator of Battleship Godios.
ゲームデザインや
I worked in everything from game design, theme music, sound effects, everything.
はい、
I developed exclusively for Playdate. It's inviting players to a new experience that combines the 80s retro style side-scroll shooter and Breakout.
Playdate seemed like a perfect fit for TPMCO, who has a lot of experience with this kind of game development.
はい、
I started developing games in 1985 and have been posted and published in top game magazines. I'm focused on MSX, Tactical Voodoo, which has been developed since 1993, and Uta Uta Woo for PlayStation.
Tactical Voodoo is TPMCO's unusual, uncategorized adventure game with fully hand-drawn animation. And Uta Uta Woo is an action game published by Enix in 2000. So how did he hear about Playdate and decide to make a game for it?
2014年にですね、東京ゲームショウで、先ほど
In 2014, I was exhibiting Tactical Voodoo in Tokyo Game Show, and Panic guys came there and told me, would you please make the next title for our Playdate?
Yeah, Panic CEO Cable Sasser and Panic Japan KK president Nobi Hasegawa met TPMCO at the annual Tokyo Game Show, or TGS, held in Chiba, Japan. TPMCO was intrigued by the nostalgic element of Playdate and wanted to make an arcade-style game for it.
I guess I heard or understood the Playdate concept that divided the history of video games on Playdate at the very beginning. If so, I want to incorporate the Breakout rule. It's a classic game history.
まあ、それでいろいろ
On the other hand, I've always wanted to make side-scrolling shooter. The giant battleship that appeared there was made up of the block-like parts, and you can block blocks. I thought that this idea of scrapping them would be interesting, and I was able to immediately imagine it. So I started testing soon.
I really like the Breakout element of this game. Super Breakout for Atari 2600 was one of my favorites as a kid. But Battleship Godios isn't just a copy of Breakout or Super Breakout. It uses that gameplay mechanism as a jumping-off point.
ブロック崩しの基本的な要素なんで
Normally,
すけど、
in the breakout, ball is shot, the ball is hit the block to break it, and then bounce the return ball with paddle and hit the block to break again and again. In order to combine the taste of side-scrolling shooter while using that rule structure, I first thought of the specification that put something like R-type option in front of the player ship and the bounce of bullet.
R-Type is a side-scrolling shooter arcade game published by Arimu in 1987.
で、テストしてみたんですけど、
However, it's really difficult to bounce what I intend to. So I decided to abolish that option and literally catch. I came up with the idea that if you catch it and fire it again, it's same as bouncing back. On the other hand, it still looks like a side-scrolling shooter. People who play cannot escape the habit of the shooting disposable bullet endlessly. So at the starting of the game, I try to use one shot to get you to release and the catch system.
チュートリアルするような形にしています。
Yeah, having to recapture your bullets is an interesting system that definitely takes some getting used to. I found it really challenging, but I like being able to rewind after messing up. And you can do that up to 3 times before it's game over.
はい。もともとはですね、好きな縦スクロールシューティング
Originally, the idea was to rewind my favorite vertical scrolling shooter. Several decades ago, I came up with the idea when I was rewinding and forwarding cassette tapes using multi-track recorder that I used to record my band. The image of the retro shooter rewinding was very attractive.
ただですね、この時間軸を
However,
操作する
the
という
idea
間
of
ゲーム
manipulating
使い方の
this timeline was very difficult to make into the game rule, and it was difficult to realize it until now, because just rewinding does not work as the game rule. Especially, most people hate redoing.
で、これまでもですね、時間を巻き戻すみたいな
Games that
ゲームはですね
rewind time have been released sometimes, such as Raid. Every time, or I was impatient that I was overtaken, but most of titles prepared 2 or more timelines. So my idea has been kept.
Braid is a puzzle platformer where one of your abilities is to rewind time. It was created by Jonathan Blow and released in 2008.
で、時間軸が
Multiple timeline means that there is an object or something that does not affect the other, even if it's rewind, or that moves on another timeline.
Yes, Crankin's time travel adventure for Playdate has this mechanism. You can move Crankin forward and backward in time, but the enemies in the game persist in their own timeline, so you play the timelines against each other strategically.
Most developers don't design on a single timeline because there's no change when rewinding, and no change can be made in the game story and
あま
experience.
りやりたくないって感じですよね。で、これは
It's very understandable as a game developer, but I want to do is single timeline. But it didn't become a game, and I was very struggling. On the other hand, I was fortunate to discover that the crank is very compatible with the operation of rewinding.
でですね、実はこの時間操作のシューティング
This idea of the shooter to control timeline has been planned for MSX for a long time, but I have been stuck because it could not control it at only same speed with the left and right keys.
今回ですね、プレートのクラン
This time, I was able to realize that variable movement by the crank is a very good match. And in the game rule of losing bullet, I was able to discover the strategy of where to make the restoration point. So finally, it was established, decided as a game.
ですね、
There are 3 types of game quality. First is the quality of the workmanship of the game. This is that can be just verified by the creator without evaluation by others, such as graphics, control, usability, etc.
で、これはですね、美術館
This is our sense of running from the art and culture that has survived over time, such as painting and fine arts stored in museums, and classical music, such as Bach. I will use these to improve the quality until I'm satisfied. The easiest things to do is to keep things simple as possible. For example, a game that uses 3 buttons always asks myself if it can be reduced to 2 or even 1 button. Always ask myself, never give up, and always trying. The same is true for game rules. Can I put together a lot of prepared items, weapons, attacks, method, etc.? Of course, this is different from making many variations with different efforts. It consolidates similar things into one, gather power, enhance the quality of synergistic effects with other things. Also, the process of asking myself what is the essence of the fun of the game I'm trying to make, and continuing to find and improve what form is most appropriate to express. This is the same of graphics. It's possible to reduce colors as much as possible, or to simplify complicated images by continuing to take on challenges. Quality will improve because what survives over time is usually simple. Of course, the simplest thing that survives after being selected from a huge number of candidates. So it has power. This will make the infographics design easier to understand. For example, the information marks of the airport are very simple and easy to understand because the design has already been verified and polished for many years, so that it's easy for visitors all over the world to understand. There are so much to be learned from here. Second is the quality of the game playability. Even if the game is artistic and elegant, if it's difficult to play, players don't choose. If the game genre already exists, there are many verifications and ingenuity. So if developers imitate the ways people can give a fine playability to players. I asked someone to play, observe where the player gets stuck, how to fix it so it doesn't get stuck, and if everyone enjoy it as I enjoy it. I think it's essential to improve the quality, that having many good friends who give straightforward impression without complimenting, and always preparing environment like on mirror. It's also very important to exhibit at the event, such as a game show, that many people play, to constantly observe and get hints for improvement. The last thing is don't show or get a reputation for others until the basic fun of the game is fixed. If you accidentally show it, not only will the value of others be mixed into the game, if it's more innovative it is, the more fragile it will be, resulting in area decomposition. First, make it until you are satisfied. After finished, you will start the process of devising how to convey the fun. Doing so will protect your original inspiration. Of course, this is only if you want to create your own original and innovative game.
TPMCO strives to create games with unique gameplay as well as graphic style, and since he's been creating games since the mid-1980s, he felt right at home with Playdate's 1-bit screen.
I'm used to 1-bit graphics in MSX since then, so I'm always enjoying it very much. It's a great environment for simplicity. In addition, I configure one dot with 2x2 to give a more dot in the development with Playdate.
So each dot or square he draws is actually 4 pixels square on Playdate's screen. That scale helps it look and feel more like a classic arcade game. So does the little flashing insert coin message on the title screen. In keeping with that, the sound design and limited music in Battleship Godios are inspired by old Namco games.
This time, the sound is perfectly linked and generated to the rewind operation, like MTLs and videotapes. I have established a way to free simulate it, but I've kept it to medium duet to Playdate performance limitations. The BGM
BGM is background music.
at the start of the game is Namco's debut strike. This also takes into account that music is easier to hear when rewinding. Godios does not play BGM during the game. This is to correctly convey the player the sound when a breath is lost, catch, or hit as information.
I was super interested to learn that the background music at the start of the game was inspired by Xevious, a vertically scrolling shooter arcade game released by Namco in 1982. The music reminded me of Namco's Pac-Man, but Xevious was actually way more popular in Japan than Pac-Man.
Of course, I designed those sound effects so that they can be heard effectively when rewinding. All sound effects are not warped, it's all playing in scale, like the 80s Namco games. Since it's played in the scale, it can be played in reverse.
But getting the backwards sound effect required some extra work. Just playing the sounds in reverse didn't quite achieve the results he wanted.
The problem was that when the position jumped due to the crank, the sound reproduction position also jumped one after another, and it did not sound like it was rewinding. This is solved by bringing the sound reproduction point toward the crank position. Impossible is nothing I thought at that time.
Like a lot of arcade-style action games, Battleship Godios is designed to be challenging, requiring precision and skill. But how did TPMCO balance making it challenging while keeping it fun?
Initially, the Godios was made up of blocks and programmed to be scrapped when hit by the bird. However, as a result of the blocks being broken little by little, the shape of the original battleship disappeared. So it became impossible to know what was broken. When you destroy the last piece, you have destroyed the battleship. But it was so boring that I was surprised. After all, the battleship is not present unless it explodes in its entirety at once, like boom. As a result of various trials there, I settled on the current style that the black skeleton of the battleship remains. However, the breakout feelings that I had originally imagined has faded a little. The first challenge in this game is getting used to the release and the catch mechanism. Next, whether or not you can learn the basic technique of continuously hitting barracks by holding down the button, hitting the enemy ship continuously, and catching and correcting the returning barrack continuously. This is also the pressure to wait until the injection timing to the last minute and release it at once. As long as you shoot a single shot, it's not very fun. I played this repeatedly during development and made the best adjustment. It's finished so that the player can feel the pressure of operating in the series of flows from attacking, destroying, and ending. This is close to the pressure of playing the musical instrument, characteristic of all the video games.
Yeah, definitely. It does have that similarity of timing and technical precision that requires practice and skill building in playing a musical instrument. I also think the rewinding mechanism adds to that, since it's kind of like retrying one section of a piece of music after messing it up. So Battleship Godios was one of the games that was started pretty early in the days of Playdate. What was it like working with the SDK?
ですね、まだそのプレゼント
I've been involved since I didn't have the device yet. So every time the SDK changed, it slowed down. The display was buggy and the whole thing was redesigned.
Yeah, Playdate's software and hardware went through a lot of design iterations while developers were creating their games for it. Eventually, the SDK smoothed out, but game development was somewhat tricky to manage early on.
で、プレゼントが
I was convinced that in order to appeal Playdate to world, it was essential to have a game that used its characteristic crank. If I use a crank, the genre is action game, and in action games, I need to move certain numbers of characters. But initial Playdate had low performance, while reducing the number of characters didn't make the game. So I was stuck. Even in a shooter, it will not be possible unless there are enough moving enemies and bullets on the screen. How to speed up? I spent years researching and testing.
テストをしたりする、日々が何年も続いたわけですね。
But pursuing performance with extreme techniques that have driving MSX, feeding back the issues and improvement, plus Panic Team's remarkable efforts, the performance speed that were initially unsuitable in the last few years will come out. Now, my development has become quite comfortable.
本当に当初では考えられなかった速度が出るようになって、開発もかなり快適になりましたね。で、とはい
Of
え、
course, it's not possible to move the huge number of characters like Unity.
Unity is a cross-platform game development engine.
Important is, like human being aim for the limit at the Olympic Games, I think that aiming for the limit in the hardware of Playdate will impress people. This is a consistent policy from MSX.
で、開発に使う言語は、ルアーなんです。
I haven't used Lua before, but I like the flexibility and easy to use in this
で、
development.
とても気に入ってますね。
Lua is one of the programming languages you can use to make Playdate games. It's a scripting language, so it's generally considered by developers to be easier to use than C.
Similarly, in development with MSX, I think that the style of assembling the parts that do not need speed with BASIC and the parts that need speed with machine language in the most suitable for development. Of course, there is also C API in Playdate, but it's very easy to develop and improve the game when I built it with Lua.
ですね。
As you can see from the fact that we have been developing games for many years, it's a good game programming practice to build a system so that interesting bugs and unexpected strange movements occur during development. You program it specifically to work only as designed. These are not occur. Incorporating the bugs that occur into the game will make the game even more innovative. I think this game will give you an experience you have never experienced. But since it looks like a classic side-scrolling shooter of the 80s, it may not be fun at first because it does not get what users expect.
られないので、最初は楽しくないかもしれないですね。
It should be more breadth or should come back over time. But there is a way to play that you can experience only with this game. Please do not give up and play.
諦めずに、プレイしてもらいたいですね。とですね、その最初の
For the first few years, I didn't know how to use the crank, and I could only think such as a fishing game
Everybody comes up with fishing.
or charging items or controlling my own machine that changes the angle of the tank with a crank or just using a conventional game controller. I was totally stuck.
で、
So far, many small retro game consoles have been released tirelessly, so people will expect new experiences. I have to provide a new play experience for Playdate and give surprise. However, there are a few examples of crank games and playing history, and I couldn't find any hints. So I've been searching for years. At some point, I realized that I should operate it loosely instead of using the D-pad or the controller. And then I understood how to make the Playdate games. The winding idea is one of them.
ゴディアス巻き戻すっていうのもその一つなんですよね。なので、このプレイデートの
So I think I can make more mini games for Playdate using crank.
ってますね。
Awesome. I'd love to see another game from TPMCO, and I hope you can build your action game skills and destroy the enemy ships in Battleship Godios. You can learn more about TPMCO, his games, and his music via the links in the show notes. Thanks again for listening, and stay tuned for more episodes coming soon to the Playdate podcast feed. Bye for now. The Playdate podcast was written, produced, and edited by me, Krista Mergen. Cable Sasser and Simon Panrucker composed the theme song. Additional music and sound effects were composed by TPMCO and come from Battleship Godios. The Xevious theme was composed by Yuriko Kano, and the Pac-Man theme was composed by Toshio Kai. Extra special thanks to Nobi Hasagawa for translating my questions into Japanese, interviewing TPMCO on my behalf, and then translating his answers back into English. Thanks so much, Nobi. And special thanks as well to Michael Buckley for his Xevious insights. And as always, a huge thanks to Tim Coulter and Asher Cabrera for wrangling the podcast feed and working on the website, James Moore for making me an awesome .pda file extraction app, and Nevin Mergen, who created the podcast artwork and site design. And of course, thanks to everyone at Panic. Playdate is shipping now and available for pre-order at play.date.
ですね、80年代のビデオゲームですね、ゲームセンターのビデオゲーム。
As far as the 80s video games are concerned, you can insert coin and start playing. And when the game is over, you will have to start over. No save, no continue, start from zero. But so far, I've played it over and over again. It's like listening to your favorite music all the time.